Join me, and we will rule this galaxy as father and son.
No, I'll never join you. I wish Obi-Wan were my real dad. Yeah, psh, psh, psh.
Oh, hi! I was pretending not to see you there. Now that RMO is over, I thought we'd take a look back at some of the games that, even though they made it onto stream, didn't actually get recorded. So before the memory of those games get lost, like Luke's favorite hand, let's take a look at them together. The first game we'll be looking at is Tony Hunter playing Gar Saxon and Shadow Collective versus Thomas Norland playing Republic Clone Commander Cody. Thomas has Gar Saxon, Black Sun Enforcers, a couple of Capos, several Naked Pikes, Mandalorian Super Commandos, and two AA-5 Speeder Trucks versus Thomas Norland's Cody, two ARC Troopers, 4 Naked Clone Trooper Infantries, 3 Laser Cannon ATRTs, a LAT, and an Infantry Support Platform. They were playing on this map that you see, but you'll have to ignore the points of interest as those are from a different game. They were playing Recover the Research and Sweep and Clear, so that secondary gets you points for killing enemy units. The points of interest were approximately where those black circles are, and you can see as Recover gives you this sort of setup. Tony was playing at the top of the screen here, and Thomas was deploying from the bottom. Now, you'll have to keep in mind that I'm doing this from memory, so some of the more details of the play-by-play I've probably already forgotten. But we will get you some broad strokes here. Now, round 1 was a pretty brutal round for the heavies. Thomas Norland's ISP came in this area, whereas Tony counter-deployed a bus up here. And then we had Mandos hiding behind the bus here, and almost immediately, both of those, the ISP and the bus that got deployed here, died very quickly. The ISP took a lot of fire from Mandos that popped out and did some rocket shots into the ISP, and this is Cody we're talking about. Cody is very good at taking down armor, so he was able to take down that bus very quickly. As Tony had even more armor, and while there were some ATRTs that posted up over, I believe in this area, there was another one that came out over here. Tony's other bus came out along this area, providing a wall where he could post up his Black Sun in that area. Now, as turn 2 went on, we also had some arcs. The arcs came up in pretty aggressively, pretty hard and fast. They posted up very quickly up this side because there was a squad of Black Sun and Pikes in here, and what Thomas did was very quickly drive those arcs straight into melee with that squad, both to contest this point, and I also think that he was attempting to score that secondary objective, because that objective, the enemy territory objective, so that's worth 2 victory points. And I think that is one thing that Thomas was definitely attempting to do as he drove up very aggressively up the side. Unfortunately for him, the Mandos that he attacked saved out with, I believe, the first time they attacked, they went down to 2 of 4, and then the next time they attacked, he was just a lone Mando sitting there, and then the arcs got finished off. So even though it was a pretty good, interesting, aggressive move to dive those arcs up the side, and I think most of the time it would have paid off, this time Thomas got a little unlucky with the dice. Those Mando saves came through and kept him from scoring those 2 objective points on the side objectives, and that is pretty important. The rest of the game, later in different areas, we saw the Black Sun advance this way as the bus posted up right on top of this building to provide cover for Gar Saxon, who was in this area. Now, the ATRT, Thomas's ATRT, that was over here, did take some shots, but did not manage to do a lot of damage. The laser cannon is pretty good at hitting at armor, but the limited number of dice meant that when it was trying to clear out, trying to deal with any of the Black Sun or Gar Saxon, it just didn't have a lot of dice to deal with all of that. The other very good thing in Tony's favor is this point of interest back here was just at the right spot so that he could post up a naked unit of pikes, hide a capo back here, and they could contest this objective without risking really much. There was really not a lot Thomas could do from the other side to even pull those pikes off the objective or even really threaten them at all. Meanwhile, the Black Sun that came into this area, as well as Gar Saxon in this area, were able to kill the ATRT that had posted up in that area, as well as to put a lot of pressure on a group of clones that had hopped up onto this building to start shooting at things. So Tony was able to control this side of the board fairly well by just grabbing this point of interest basically for free, and then able to clear the ATRT off of this point of interest to grab that and prevent Thomas from putting any pressure on that as well. This one was also, for most of the time, fairly well uncontested until Thomas brought his lat in through up towards the center. There was a group of naked pikes that were standing here to contest that, and that lat one-shot them, and that's just what you love to see with those pikes. One shot, one kill, 4 kills. On the right side of the board, Thomas was able to bring up another ATRT to contest this point of interest, and he was able to secure this one pretty reasonably well, and this one. But even though another squad of arcs came up to put pressure on the Mandos and the pikes that were hanging out in this area, they weren't able to do enough damage. And it did come down to a very close game. Pretty much every round, they both were contesting at least 4 points. And for the objective, for recover, you only need to contest. You don't actually have to secure anything. So it really did come down to securing the secondary objectives. And since Thomas's very cool play to try to push into enemy territory with his arcs and clear out the Mando squad early, even though I think that was a very good play, the dice didn't do it for him, and I think it was really failing that secondary objective. He had 2 very good opportunities to get that, and since the dice failed him on both occasions, he had a very hard time keeping up with that. In the end, it was a very close game still. It was scored 12-11 in Tony's favor. This one, I feel, really came down very close, very well played on both sides, and was really a matter of dice. If Thomas had just killed one more Mando at the right time, he would have gotten that secondary objective, the very valuable 2-pointer on that secondary objective, and leapfrogged Tony. But as it was, Tony took the win. The second game that we streamed but failed to record because I'm incompetent was Dustin Growrud versus Cody Kerr. Dustin playing, as he very often does, his Galactic Empire, and he's been doing very well with his Remnant list. The very classic Remnant style of just 2 of a lot of things. We got a single short trooper, single stormtrooper, but then double up on the Death Troopers, Scout Troopers, E-Web, and Imperial Dark Troopers, versus Cody's Rebel Alliance list. We've got Han Solo, we've got the Bad Batch, we've got Din Djarin, several Naked Rebel Troopers, and then a Rebel Commando Strike Team and 2 Rebel Commandos. Now, they were playing on this same map, but they were playing a Breakthrough and Recon mission. So recon mission is you give one of your guys a token, and if they end their turn at range 2 of at least 2 enemy units, you get an objective, you get a victory point. Breakthrough, of course, is where you are trying to keep your enemy from contesting your points of interest, while you are also trying to capture enemy points of interest. And that deployment for that looks like this. So we have those 4 points of interest hanging out there this time. Dustin was at the top of the board and Cody was at the bottom of the board. As far as deployment, what we saw is that Dustin's Remnant is very good at splitting into multiple parts that operate well independently and still hit really hard. He split his forces into 3 main groups, one of them with Dark Troopers and just a naked Stormtroopers here. Then we saw some Death Troopers and an E-Web post up here. Then we saw the remaining E-Web and Dark Troopers and some other stuff. I believe it was the Shore Troopers posting up in that part. For Cody's deployment, he started with Rebel Strike Team and Commandos in this middle central area. Then he had a whole slew of naked Rebel Troopers both here and on this edge of the building. He's got a lot of naked Rebel Troopers, so he was able to spread them out a lot. Han Solo was posted up here. Din Djarin, I believe, ended up about the same spot. And what he did very early on was he threw his Bad Batch very aggressively up to that point. He did this sort of partway in the middle of the round. I feel like he probably wanted to have drawn their token later in the round to be that aggressive with them. But as it was, when he placed them forward like that, all of Dustin's group that deployed up here just started shooting. They just come in, walk on the board, and just start shooting the Bad Batch. And this is where we saw the Bad Batch turn into the Sad Batch. Because not only were they aggressively deployed and taking a lot of fire, they also rolled really poorly on their defense. So Cody's Bad Batch just sort of got diced out of the game fairly early on. Even after that first round, I believe it was down to just Hunter left after that first round. So they just took a lot of fire and rolled as if they were saving on non-surging white saves, honestly. What Cody was able to do was use some commandos and those snipers to put some pain on the Death Troopers that were sitting up here. That long-range pierce against those Death Troopers is very potent, and those Death Troopers were hurting very quickly. But they did hang on, and they did, I believe, survive through most of the game. But their combat effectiveness was very quickly taken out. But in this game, we're scoring objectives, scoring points of interest. The main thing is as long as something stays alive, it's still a scoring point. So after Bad Batch came up to this point behind the hill and got hit really hard, Han Solo actually joined them up here to try to offer some supporting fire into the flanks of the enemies that were hanging out here. But I think Dustin did a very good job of he posted up his scout troopers up here and underneath the archway. And what that did is it gave Cody kind of one choice for target. If he gets any closer, then it's just going to be really, really worse. But his one target are those scout troopers. Unfortunately, the scout trooper having low profile really neutered Han Solo's offensive capabilities. Because that low profile means that you are definitely canceling, unless Han Solo rolls 2 crits, then you're going to cancel one of them. And so that Pierce 2 goes down to just one guy picking up. And in fact, the first time Han Solo took 2 shots into those scout troopers, he only took out 1 model. After that, the Han Solo hung out here. The Pathfinders, Cody's Pathfinders, were hanging out here trying to get shots into the Dark Troopers to try to ionize them, to try to debilitate them, which he was somewhat successfully able to do. Those Dark Troopers with that ion token weren't able to be quite as mobile and quite as offensively potent as they might have otherwise been, which was also important because that unit, the Dark Troopers up here, was the unit that was holding on to Dustin's secondary objective token. So not being able to push those forward very well meant that they were not scoring the secondary objective. So Cody was actually able to take an early lead based purely on that secondary objective that he was scoring that Dustin wasn't. Unfortunately, the Dark Troopers that were down here were able to hammer the commandos that were holding this point. And very quickly, they were able to just walk onto this point. Furthermore, they had a group of naked stormtroopers with them, and the Dark Troopers were so effective at cleaning up this side of the board, including the generic rebel commander that was posted up right there, that the naked storms were able to just sit on this point and not really worry about anything as the Dark Troopers continued to advance through the center of the field, just smashing through rebel troopers as they went. Then we have over on the other side of the board the rebel troopers. The naked rebel troopers started moving forward through here, up here, and Din Djarin actually started advancing through here. Din Djarin, I feel like he's a very strong unit, but he came into play a little too late in this game to have much of an impact on the scoring. So the Pathfinders, so this point right here, by the end of the game, was just a pile of dead rebel bodies as he tried to assault the castle that Dustin had built in this area. In this area, Bad Batch went down. Bad Batch went down at the top of round 2 before they actually got to go. So that was big for Dustin to clear them out. Before Bad Batch even got to make an attack, they went down. It took a lot longer, but Han Solo eventually also went down right in that area, as did a team of commandos, as did the Pathfinders. So this spot right here was just a killing field for those poor rebels. In the end, Cody did manage to push his Mando up onto this point of interest by doing those, very nice speed 3 moves that Din Djarin has with his jetpack. And he was able to, at one point, he was actually not just contesting, but he had that thing secured until all of Dustin's guys that were hanging up here and an E-web that was hanging over here turned and just started shooting at Mando. Now, Mando shrugged off the wound. He might have taken 2 wounds that entire time, and since he had Grogu with him, he was a 6 wound model, so he was feeling pretty fine. The problem was the suppression. Dustin got him up to 6 suppression, and at that point, Cody wasn't even contesting that objective. So, towards the end of the game, Dustin was able to keep Cody from contesting either of his objectives here or here, while he was able to take this one and just clear this side of the board. So, in each round that he was doing that, he's scoring 4 points. 1 for here, 1 for here, and then 2 for this point, whereas Cody is only scoring 1 for not having anyone contest that point back there, as there were a couple units of naked rebels swinging around this way. Dustin is a very good player, a very careful player, and he makes very few mistakes, and so it is very difficult to find ways to peel him off objectives to score points against him. And I think he did a really good job of dividing his forces to meet the threats that were coming at them. Some fairly aggressive play from Cody was met by some fairly unfortunate defensive dice rolls from him that just took out his Bad Batch very quickly. As I was watching, it did feel a little bit unfortunate that he just kept stacking troops up in this area just to have them die. I don't honestly know what else there really was to do, as he really, at the end of the game, to try to get some momentum, to try to get something going, he didn't have many options other than just throw things forward and hope to luck. But luck wasn't there, so it was pretty rough for him. So the end of the game went 12-7 in Dustin's favor. So there you have it, a roundup of the 2 games at RMO that we streamed but didn't get recorded. The other 3 games that we streamed, you can see in their full glory here on this very channel. Now, if you don't mind me. Now, finally, at last, I have my own streaming show. I can tell the story that I want to tell. And don't mind me if I just hop in and just kind of take some of the episodes of the show that's named after you, right? All right, cool. Didn't think so. Because let's face it, everyone's here to watch Baby Yoda anyway.